everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Foxify Radio. Today I am joined by Evan. Evan, great to have you.
Great to be on. Thanks for having me.
Of course, you're very welcome. So for those that don't know Evan, Evan is a YouTuber. He primarily does content around trading, etc., etc. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, Evan.
Yeah, so I've been pretty serious. I first knew about crypto back in 2015. In that era, a little bit. I was young then. I didn't really have too much money to put into it,
Yeah.
but I learned a lot about it in that kind of bull run. And then I got more into it a lot in 2020, kind of after the pandemic there, and learned a lot of trading, watched a lot of people on YouTube learn the trading. And I do a lot of, I do short-term trades. I do long-term stuff, accumulation too. Since I kind of do crypto and investing and this type of stuff full time, I have the time to do it in a lot of different avenues, a lot of different ways. So I'm always learning new things. The technical analysis rabbit hole could go on, a lot that takes years to really digest and learn everything there is. But it's fascinating. I don't think it's for everyone, but it's been an amazing journey.
Yeah, no, completely agree. Do you know, I love like the TA in general, and I find it fascinating to watch the markets, but I'm not going to lie, like I look at a chart and I see the lines and stuff that people have drawn, the trends, and I'm just like mind blown by it all. I think it's something you have to be able to have the time to really learn and sort of dedicate yourself to. I think anyway.
Yeah, and then there's that, and then there's the NFTs, and now there's the ordinals. There's just so much. There's always something new to learn about. Somebody was telling me like the ordinals a few weeks ago, and I'm like, ordinals, oh man, now I got to learn this whole new thing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's like, yeah, it's just huge, isn't it? The whole Web3 space, crypto, blockchain, all of it is absolutely massive. And I feel like it almost moves in these bubbles whereby, you might be into NFTs, you might be into Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin's, a whole community on its own. You might be alts or meme coins. I feel like there's so many areas. And like you said, there's something new to learn all the time.
Yeah, it's a good and a bad thing. It's a good thing. It keeps your mind sharp, keeps you young, but at the same time, you're just like, okay, first now I learned Bitcoin. That's kind of like the Bitcoin maximalists. Their path is just like, let's just learn Bitcoin. Probably take a few weeks, learn this, and then say everything else is just garbage, and let's just propagate this.
Yeah, it's the Bitcoin maxis on Twitter.
Yeah.
Are very vocal, aren't they? I feel like more than any other sort of, you get maxis for everything, don't you? You get like your Polygon maxis, your Cardano maxis, etc. And I think like Bitcoin always the loudest. Maybe it's because it's the original, maybe, but
it's it's kind of like the less accountability, I think, kind of thing, because it's like the odds, it's like venture capitalism kind of versus value investing. Like we know the odds of Bitcoin being around in 10, 20 years are like probably 98%, 97%, something extremely high like that. Odds of like Cardano, Solana, all of those, Chainlink being around, there's a good probability, but it's a venture capitalism approach. You can't just put all your eggs in Cardano and expect to become a multimillionaire out of that. I mean, maybe you will, but you have much better odds Bitcoin will still be around in 20 years versus Cardano.
Yeah, no, great point. Absolutely. So what was it that first sort of piqued your interest in cryptocurrency?
Oh man, so back in 2015, I was in college. I was 18 years old, and I found it on the internet, and I saw how people were kind of using it to gamble, and I knew about like kind of how they were using. I knew about the Silk Road type stuff. I didn't do anything with that, but I just found it very interesting, like how this magic internet money was all over here, and how it started out really low, and then it shot up to $1,000, and it was back to 200. And some people are saying, oh no, it's going to go up to. I mean, people are talking about. I don't think anybody was talking about 60 grand back then, but people were talking about maybe 20 grand. I'm sure people, high numbers. Other people were saying it's going to pennies. And I didn't really understand it completely. I think I knew about the Winklevoss. I watched the movie The Social Network a few years prior, and I heard about how the Winklevoss like invested a ton, or were investing a ton of money into it. And I found that very like intriguing, like kind of an all or nothing type deal. And I did buy a good amount back in 2015, 2016. I remember at the bottom of that bear market, I was kind of into it around $200 or something.
Wow.
And I sold a lot of it at like $1,000, $2,000, thinking I was a genius, and then kind of watched the rest of the market just fly up. And everyone was asking me, do you still have Bitcoin? Was that 20K? And at that point, I kind of knew it was in a bubble. It was kind of, that's the first like thing the first time I realized that when something has gone up extramentally and every single person won't shut up about it, usually there's like a 98% chance it's probably going to go down. So I knew about that. I knew it would go down. I knew it would probably be years before it would come back because all these people FOMOing in at the top, they're going to have some discipline to make money with it. And then waited a few more years. I was apathetic about it and then got back into it a lot in 2020 when I actually had more time. We're working from home. The pandemic, a lot of people were talking about it. Not a lot of people, but a good number of people were talking about it, like on YouTube. A lot of people, I'm going all in on crypto. And this was like when Bitcoin was at like 10K, ETH was at $300. And I was just like, well, let's see what happens. So I just started putting all of my money kind of into it in 2020, kept investing in it. ETH at $300, Bitcoin at 10K, Matic at like 15 cents, Cardano at like 20 cents. So it was a nice ride up. It was a nice ride up.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I got into it, and then made enough money trading and investing in it to kind of quit my job and do this full time since then.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a really interesting story. And I always love finding out how people, got into it, what it was that sort of got them interested. I remember when I very first heard of Bitcoin, and it's really funny looking back. I was quite young. And at the time there was like quite a few, I guess like probably early versions of the games that kids play now, like Roblox and stuff. Sort of like I think Habbo Hotel was a big one. And I remember when I first heard of Bitcoin, I just thought it was something like that. Like I just was like, oh, it's just some sort of gaming,
That's what, yeah.
Never did I think it would ever, amount to anything like it. I was young and I was completely uneducated in the space at the time. It wasn't something I was particularly interested in when I was younger. And when I look back at what my early sort of impression of it was, knowing very little, it was just a game basically.
Yeah.
It's wild to see what it's done. Yeah, no, and I think with the halving next year, I feel like interest is really drumming up again, and I'm excited to see actually what it does sort of in the next maybe like 12 to 18 months. But where do you see it going in the sort of that time?
So I think, if history kind of repeats itself from what we saw, obviously the accumulation years were 2015, 2019 so far, and 2023 is looking, it's kind of like we're in a simulation how crazy 2023 has been in terms of similar to 2019. First half of 2019 all up, first half of 2023 so far basically all up, rallying from the low at 15K to about 30K. If we do repeat what we saw in 2019, and you got to realize too, if you look at a lot of like social metrics, new people following Twitter exchanges, people getting into crypto, we're in a large, large area of apathy. Like not that many new people are getting into it. I look at a lot of YouTube channels, like they're like a lot of the channels just on fundamentals, like other than trading. Like trading, you keep the audience because you could kind of make money when it goes down. You're doing other things. But like the fundamental channels, like new people just getting into it based on fundamentals, that has plummeted. And I believe that should kind of continue to go down. So this is probably most likely going to be the peak apathy stage. I think probably until the next happening, probably the next 6 to 12 months is just peak apathy, which is also the big place to probably get into right now. I think Bitcoin, because Bitcoin dominance, and if somebody's listening who's not too familiar with Bitcoin dominance, that's a percentage of the total crypto market cap that is Bitcoin. And back in 2019, when you were in that accumulation year, a lot of people become Bitcoin maximalists and they sell their altcoins. They give a lot of the tourists, the people that aren't that serious about it, they'll sell their Dogecoin, they'll sell their meme coins, all that stuff. And either they'll convert it to Bitcoin or they'll just leave crypto and give up on it. That's what's happening right now. And that's when Bitcoin keeps outperforming all of the altcoins. If you're not familiar, Bitcoin has outperformed Ethereum about 25%, about 25% since last September. So, and it's outperformed a lot of these altcoins, excrementally, if you look at the charts. So we're just in that place. I think this is the really good place to DCA into Bitcoin. I think ultimately over the next 6 months, you're going to see a lot of apathy because you're seeing apathy right now where Bitcoin's at like 26K. If we come back down to like 20K, and even the last two bear markets, the last two accumulation years, it was into 2020 last time, but the last two bear markets, you saw double bottoms essentially. Not they made higher highs, but if you see somewhat of a double bottom, 17K, 18K, maybe in a bad recession, who knows? I get a lot of hate for this. I do think it is possible to potentially make a lower low into the end of the year. A lot of these altcoins could get decimated into the end of the year. That's like peak apathy when nobody really cares. That's when you could potentially make life-changing wealth. I think, not financial advice, but I think investing in a diversified portfolio of altcoins towards the end of the year, early next year, probably prior to the happening. Bitcoin, sure. I mean, it's a $500 billion market cap right now. You could make some money with Bitcoin, but to get those crazy gains that everybody wants in those bull runs, you're probably going to have to buy ETH and diversify into altcoins and other types of things at this point.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of my biggest like kick myself moments from this year was not buying more Bitcoin when it fell to 15K. I always said if it gets to 15K, I'm going to go more in because I'm not a big cryptocurrency investor. Like I do obviously invest, but it's not my day job. I don't, trade. I don't make money from trading. And I was like, yeah, when it gets to 15K, I'm gonna buy some more Bitcoin. And it got to 15K, and I don't know why, but I stalled, and I was like, oh my gosh, it could go lower. And for some reason, I didn't buy it, and obviously that didn't last very long. And we haven't seen it get that low again. So I'm always on the lookout for signs or like people who like yourself who are great at TA that think that it could possibly go that low again. And I'm really hoping that it does before it then goes back up, because I'd love to get in at that lower point. Or I missed the opportunity
Yeah.
last.
I mean, when we were at 15K, like everybody was talking about Bitcoin being that low. There was a lot of fear, but like in terms of like Twitter with the SBF thing, FTX, that going down, there was a lot of interest in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like if we go that low again, if we get even close to that low again, it's going to be very apathetic. Like not as many people are going to be talking about it. And that's going to be like the real opportunity to probably get in and like watch the rally just go straight up for the next year. Like if you're somebody who's trying to get in at a time where you just want to watch this thing go straight up for, 6 months to a year, maybe even a little bit longer, that's going to probably be the place, similar to kind of right after the pandemic, because that's what Bitcoin's kind of known for, just going straight up for 6 months to a year. It was let's see, April of 2020 all the way until like almost mid 2021, just straight up. The same thing happened the last time. Oh man, was it like late 2015 all the way to the peak in 20, or was it 27? It was almost 2 years at that point. So you want to wait kind of till that area. I think, I mean, the best thing right now, I think, is like in terms of people, ask me, how long should you DCA into Bitcoin or crypto? I think the DCA period for Bitcoin is going to be, you're going to have some discipline, strong skin with this, because I think you're going to be bleeding during this. But if you DCA'd in now until like January, February, what is that, like 8 months, 6 to 8 months, that's going to be a prime period to get in if you're willing to hold it for a few years.
Yeah, no, totally. For me as well, I see Bitcoin, like I said, I'm not a trader. I don't get charts anywhere we're like near well enough to buy and sell based on them. So I hold, and for me, I see Bitcoin as like a real long-term investment. For me, it's a five-year thing. It's even a 10-year thing. It's not something that I would look at taking out, at all, unless I desperately needed it for something. For me, it's definitely for the long term. So I think you're right. I think DCAing in is definitely the best strategy with the market as it is. And if you're not looking to sort of flip it, then yeah, it's a good time. But I'm certainly interested to see if it drops again.
Yeah, I mean, it's the other thing too that like people get kind of angry when I say is, if you compare this to kind of the NASDAQ after the dot-com bubble, I mean, you were waiting a decade, before you got, really the decade to buy would be, if it's like the NASDAQ after the dot-com bubble, your best decade is going to be in the 2030s, where you're just going to go kind of straight up. I mean, if it's like that, you may get a bull run in 2024, 2025. I think you're still going to get a bull run after next happening, but you may not make a new all-time high, especially if the U.S. economy, the whole world, a lot of the world is in recession. Bad things are going on. All these, the crypto fanatics hate me saying this, but from a trader perspective, or a perspective like that, I mean, you got to be real. Like, crypto is a risky asset. It's a highly volatile asset. I mean, the people who bought a lot of the NASDAQ, a lot of those tech stocks after the dot-com bubble, they did well if they waited, 10 years. But a lot of that stuff in that decade, gold and silver outperformed the NASDAQ from 2001 to 2011 by a significant amount. I mean, that may I'm not saying that would happen here. I mean, we have more inflation now. There's a lot more things that would bring Bitcoin up. And you also got to realize, your buying power is very important too. You got to realize, you buy the asset, you got to pay taxes on it when you sell it. And then that's kind of the crime here is inflation too. And there's really, even if you're buying something that's a good hedge against inflation, whether it be the S&P 500, Bitcoin, gold and silver, when you sell that asset, you got to still pay taxes on it. And that's kind of, I don't even have a really, I mean, you could do the Michael Saylor approach, maybe borrow against it. Be careful with that. I mean, he was getting nervous with that too. I mean, if we make a lower low, he could be in trouble with that. But, I know it sounded kind of negative, so kind of all, doomsday or whatever. But yeah, I mean, inflation hurts everybody, and there's ways to hedge against it to be above the average person, but inflation's tough.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you're right. When you're considering the buying power, that should be, a huge part of the decision making process as well. Not just, oh, what is the price of, I don't know, Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever it is you're buying today? It's more than just that, with inflation and stuff, there is actually more that influences it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a great point. Do you trade altcoins? Do you hold altcoins? Are you just sort of blue chip top 50?
So right now I'm very, very heavy Bitcoin. I've been very, very heavy Bitcoin since around April of 22 when I sold like a ton of the altcoin areas just because the altcoin Bitcoin evaluations look so bad. Bitcoin dominance looks so bullish. So I'm very heavy Bitcoin right now. I'm going to start DCing into altcoins as soon as Bitcoin dominance is in kind of a Wyckoff accumulation pattern. Some people are saying it could hit 60%. That's what a lot of the technical targets would tell you as long, on the next Bitcoin and next significant crypto pullback, say Bitcoin comes back down to 20K, even high teens, very likely Bitcoin dominance would get to at least the mid 50s. And that's where you may see a bottom on a lot of the Bitcoin altcoin pairs for an outstanding place to potentially convert some of your Bitcoin into altcoins, Ethan altcoins, or just, start DCAing into altcoins. I don't see really a reason for long term. Sure, there will be, like, people will always tell me like, oh, this random, altcoin with its $20 million market cap is outperforming Bitcoin for last month. Okay, yeah. I mean, sure. I mean, okay, maybe you found that and maybe you got lucky with that one and you're a genius. Okay, maybe you're better than me or whatever. Show me show me proof of this. Where's your Lambo and all that? But, most of the altcoins will continue to bleed against Bitcoin right now. So I'm waiting till that Bitcoin dominance gets to about 55%. I'm waiting hopefully until ETH. I mean, ETH is high right now at like 18 or 17K, very high right now. If ETH could get down to like 12, 1300, I mean, especially with regulatory FUD coming, I do think ETH can bleed quite a bit against Bitcoin over the next few months. End of summer is when I'm thinking of getting into alts long term. In terms of trading, yeah, I do trade alts. I mean, we have a Discord. I have two other analysts there. We do technical analysis on alts. We do trade alts. That's the same as Bitcoin there. There are a few small altcoin positions I've held throughout this bear market, such as Cosmos. That's a good one for staking. Cardano, I've held on to a little bit. Matic, I've held on to a little bit. But other than that, I'm just very high I've been very, very heavy Bitcoin since April of 22, and it's worked out very well in terms of Bitcoin outperforming the vast, vast majority of all these altcoins.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. So, Evan, tell us a little bit about how you got into YouTube.
Yeah, so I had a lot that I made in the bull run of 2020 into 2021. I sold a lot, luckily, actually in May of 21 when I stopped working, when I quit my job, and I had a lot of money, so I figured everybody was talking about crypto. I mean, that was more of a obvious peak back then. If you kind of know bubble patterns, everybody's talking about this. All these 16-year-old kids are becoming multimillionaires on these NFTs. That was a more obvious place. And one YouTube channel I watched a lot, Crypto Faced, who is an excellent analyst who created the main indicator that I use in my trading market cipher. He was like saying, like, look, we're probably going to come down here May of 21. A lot of smart people. And Ben Cowan, too, another good analyst that I like. He was talking about it too. So I sold a lot of my holdings, took a lot of profits there, and then I was just sitting like on a lot of cash that could have lasted me, a long, long time. And I just started doing YouTube videos to try to teach people some of the stuff that I learned that I used to make so much money in the last bull run. And then, in that period, and I think it was around August of 21 when the market was starting to come back up. I mean, obviously now if you start a crypto YouTube channel, it could take some time. There's less interest in it, but so many more people are getting into it. Everybody wants a piece of the pie. When the pie is almost all gone, I got a lot of subscribers pretty quickly. So yeah, I mean, it only took a few weeks to get 5,000, 6,000
Wow.
subscribers. I got a shout out from Crypto Face. So, I mean, I was lucky in certain regards, but just if you're in the right place, if you're providing some people something some people want and some people need, a lot of people, there was a ton of renewed interest in crypto right there. People wanted to learn about it. People wanted a piece of the pie. They wanted to know, is it too late? All that type of stuff. So you blow up like that. If you start making videos now, I mean, you'll grow slowly, but as you get into that bull run, then you'll really probably blow up with your channel.
Yeah, I think YouTube is, the longer YouTube has been existing, the harder it is, I think, to grow on there. YouTube really took off was around 2009, and you had people on there and they weren't really creating anything particularly exciting, but because it was new and it was right place, right time, they just blew up. And like you said, I think now it's so much harder. Like for you to grow thousands of subs in such a short time, in like more today terms rather than like when YouTube was really new, that's incredible. So really good job. It is really hard, I think, to grow on YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of it, it's just like anything else. Like, look, I mean, if you just provide, and this is like easier said than done, if you provide, if you're better than everybody else, or you have some niche, something that's different than everybody else, you're going to blow up. But that's very hard because there's so many people who probably have more experience than you and probably have been doing it a lot longer than you have. That's going to take a while to be better than everybody else, even if you're working 12 hours a day. That's easier said than done. So, I mean, unless you have just some niche, something you're good at that nobody else can replicate, then you'll blow up. It's all about providing value. I mean, even if just 10 people see your videos and those 10 people love your video, they're going to tell their friends about it. They're going to tell their family about it. They're going to tell everybody about it. The next thing you know, you're going to have thousands and thousands of views. It kind of works like that. But if you're not providing anything that's different than what your competitors are, that's different or better than what your competitors are, you're probably going to be dead in the water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, completely agree. Completely agree. So where did you learn about like TA? You self-taught? Did you have particular educational resources? I know it sounds like you used YouTube a bit to learn about TA strategies.
Yeah, so I watched a lot of like really. So I liked the live streams by CryptoFace. He was one of the few people that would live stream the trades and all. It's like funny with the live stream, especially like leverage trading. Like there's a lot of people that live stream them, and I kind of laugh about this. Like there's people on Twitch that I've watched that's just live stream trades. Not all of them, but like there's people that just lose hundreds and thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, and like I've never seen like there's certain people I've just never seen them in the green, which is hilarious. But in watching kind of crypto face, there was enough like there was losses too. Obviously, nobody's gonna be right all the time. You'd be a billionaire pretty quickly if that was the case. But there was a lot more wins than losses. Obviously, he made a world record actually shorting the market. I believe in May of 21. I think he made $1 million on the way down and a
Wow.
million on the way up, and it was completely live streamed. Like this isn't anything you can.
Wow.
Yeah, this isn't anything you could really fake. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess you could argue if the guy's like a multi-billionaire or something, if you're just throwing so much money out there and only showing it. But nothing's 100% in life. But I mean,
Mhm.
it was kind of a world record trade, and he was able to do it live and kind of show you where he went in to short it and where he went long to kind of long it back on the way up a little bit and make another 500 grand or $1 million. Obviously the market's not that volatile every day. You make those big wins, especially I think all the world record trades are short trades just because price typically goes down faster than it goes up. Fear is stronger than kind of greed. When you're greed, you're putting in money kind of more slowly. When it's
Yeah.
fear, it's just everybody's selling immediately, crash the
Mhm.
everything's kind of coming down like that. So I watched that a lot. And learned money flow. I learned momentum waves, a lot of things like that. Other channels I watched too. Jason Casper was a big one that I watched. I took his course, which was pretty good. And obviously, it gets a lot of like people say, oh, they sell the courses, all that. And you could find, pretty much everything in anybody's course. I mean, I have a course. You could find everything kind of in my course for free, when you buy a course, you're paying kind of for the convenience. Everything's organized and right there in front of you. That's mainly the thing you're paying for. And if you have that organization, that convenience, that helped me to a certain extent, that could kind of save you time. You're kind of paying for the convenience and the time there, which did help me, especially in a world where everything is, there's just so many different things. Everybody's, and certain things are about just a bunch of nonsense. Buy this indicator, it's just a buy and sell indicator. Yeah, right. Those are, kind of a bunch of nonsense. Usually that's, if it's just buy and sell, like, it's not that easy. Come on. But it took a few months to really learn TA good. I mean, I'm still learning, more and more things now, but really I read the book Trading in the Zone by Mark Douglas too, which is basically, he says in the book that, look, there's people that spend 40 years learning TA and learning the markets and they're still not profitable. There's other people who spent a few months and only know basic stuff and they have strategies that work and they're making money. What's separating the profitable from the unprofitable? The profitable have a strategy that works and they're using good risk management, which is the most important thing. I mean, you could have the best strategy in the world. It's not going to work 100% of the time. If you use pretty good risk management, then you could have a system that kind of works over time. I think a lot of thing is the fear and greed. People get too greedy. They just do too big of positions, and that's the human psychology. That's the tough thing that comes in. Also, market conditions do change from time to time. Some strategies won't work as well in different market conditions, and you got to be kind of prepared for that to kind of adapt and change your strategies over time. I mean, if you're just trying to trade for a living without already having a lot of money saved up, where if it doesn't work out, you'll be okay, or without having some other revenues of income, I'm not saying it's impossible, but people have done it, but it's very, very hard. Like that's like playing in the NFL, you know what I mean? Becoming, the next Hollywood actor. I'm not saying it's impossible, but obviously that's very, 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 very tough. But to make some money, to get maybe 10% or get 20% on an account every month, on a leverage trading account every month, and do that on the side and maybe do other things with it, that's not as hard. That's a doable goal for someone, I think, who is focused. I mean, people have told me, reasonable goals, this is what kind of no one talks about, kind of reasonable goals. I had a person tell me this is a very reasonable goal. Like he turned like 18K into like 56K over like a 6 or 8 month period. That's about 10% a month. That's a reasonable goal with good risk management. And you can usually, like, this is where it gets interesting with trading versus kind of, trading versus just investing in Bitcoin. If you know what you're doing, if you're a very good trader and you use good risk management, you could probably beat the Bitcoin returns. But if you're versing trading versus getting that 10 or 20% a month, going both long and short, versus just buying altcoins, DCAing into a bunch of altcoins when the time is right in a few months, I think, and getting potential 20Xs or 30Xs, those crazy numbers in the bull run, that's going to outperform 10 or 20%. So there are some times where it may be better just to kind of buy those altcoins, have that diversified portfolio of altcoins, ride that up to the next bull run when it gets euphoric, when everybody's talking about it, then get out. So you got to adjust. There's different circumstances. So as we get into the next bull run, like, look, I'm still going to be trading, but a lot of more focus is going to be put on more of the venture capitalism aspect of things, DCAing into the right altcoins, maybe a few NFTs as well, because the sky is the limit with that. There's no kind of cap that you get with trading like the 10 or 20% a month.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's a really fair point. I think aiming for something realistic, I think would make a massive difference. I think I read somewhere that something like 95% of traders lose, which is just crazy numbers. And I feel like a lot of that comes down to, like you say, this fear, this greed. I think one challenge a lot of traders face is they might be excellent at like TA, they might be able to read the market, they might even, be great at the psychology behind it and the behavior patterns that might cause different things within the market. But getting past, I think, emotional trading is probably one of the final hurdles. In my experience with traders that I've spoken to, and how do you get past the emotional trading? How do you make sure that you're looking at things level-headedly? You're not sort of just acting based on a feeling or a panic or an excitement.
You have to follow a system, I think, is kind of the most important thing. And the other thing too is like it's not like the boring, like kind of following a strategy, following a system, making, small amounts here and there, using it as a slow process. That's not as marketable and that's not as fun to watch on YouTube. So that doesn't get as many views as just somebody kind of gambling and doing large positions. So that's the biggest thing, I think, kind of following a strategy. I mean, if you're just very, very disciplined, this is easier said than done, obviously, but very disciplined, very stoic about it, and very, I would say, a popular quote is like trading is patient people taking money from the impatient. I think that's very, very true. A lot of people always, they may kind of play games with their mind. They may be like, oh, that my strategy isn't here, but I want to enter this trade anyway, arbitrarily, and then they'll enter it, and then they'll lose, and then they'll revenge trade, they'll get annoyed, and those type of things. Easier said than done to avoid these
Mhm.
type of things. We all make these mistakes, but I think ultimately a risk management calculator too, as long as you are comfortable, it's more about kind of betting. It's kind of like if you compared it to like a professional, I mean, it's harder to do even this now, but a professional back in the day, professional blackjack player, when they weren't shuffling and changing the decks every 3.5 seconds, counting cards, you have an edge against the dealer, that 60% edge or whatever. And as long as you're not betting, your entire stack of chips on every trade, if you have a good system there, then you will make money as long as that edge stays. And the thing is, sometimes that edge could go away as market conditions change. That's what a lot of people don't tell you when they show you their strategies. They'll show you, they'll cherry pick the last month it worked, where it's 70, 80, 90% or whatever. Then like the month after it'll work 30%. You got to have, a buffer to kind of lose some trades there and then realize, maybe reevaluate, try a different strategy, something like that. You got to have wiggle room for that. The other thing too is a lot of people will stop using their strategy. This is the opposite. A lot of people stop using their strategy too early. Like they'll lose 3 trades. Mark Douglas in the book Trading Zone talks about this. Somebody will lose 3. The average person will lose 3 trades, get annoyed. Oh, this strategy isn't working. Let's try something else. They'll try another strategy. Will lose 3 trades. But then the thing they don't realize is after those 3 trades lost, the next 5 trades would have been winners. That's the thing a lot of people don't realize there. It's a common occurrence to lose 2 or 3 trades. And if you're getting annoyed with losing 2 or 3 trades, you want to get rich too quickly. You're not viewing this as what it is, as more of a slow and gradual process. And I think, you can, I mean, you obviously can't get rich overnight. That's impossible. To get rich within, a few weeks or a month, that's impossible. But to change your life in a year or 6 months, those are obtainable goals. I'm not saying with trading, but to change your life and put in a system, to change things excrementally in your life in 6 to 12 months, that's obtainable. To change your life in a week, that's not really obtainable.
Mhm. No, it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. What is, one challenge or one, big lesson that you learned when you first started trading?
Yeah, I think it's the number one thing is kind of risk management. That is probably the biggest thing. I mean, a lot of people, they watch these YouTube videos of these live traders just kind of degenerate trading, and that's, it's essentially gambling at that point. And everybody seems to have like, I don't, that beginner luck thing. Everybody seems to do that a few times and win like a ton of money. Like I was talking to a guy one time. I remember this was like the peak of like at 68K, and he had no clue what he was doing, like literally no experience. He turned like $500 in like 20 grand or something outrageous, like
Wow.
on 50x leverage in a few weeks. With like, he just went long on 50x leverage, and somehow, it just rode up the market all the way from like 40K to like 68K. And then, he was obviously really like, oh, anybody, I could do this, I'm a genius, yada, yada. And then I don't know what happened with him, but I'm willing to bet he probably lost some of it. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's kind of like the biggest thing. Like you'll make like crazy amounts of money in the like there's people that will turn like 5 grand into 20 grand very quickly, or even that crazy example, $500 into 10 or 20 grand quickly, just degenerately, like the craziest, most risky, like 2% win rate thing.
Mhm.
And they'll just think they could keep recreating that. And then they'll do that same thing 10 more times, and they'll just keep losing, and they'll lose all of it. So I
Yeah.
think that's like the biggest kind of thing that like a lot of people don't realize. The risk management is really popular. I mean, you could watch a lot of YouTubers and they won't really talk about risk management. A lot of the big ones, a lot of times, I don't really like, they'll talk about it a little bit, but it's just not the reason it's not like they're bad people that they don't talk about, but the reason they don't talk about it is because people don't want to hear about it. People are just more interested in the get rich overnight, do these type of trades. So yeah, I think the most important thing is like kind of the risk management, the more boring stuff about it. And it's, it's a whole process. It's a lot to learn with everything. And I mean, there's human error, there's things like that. I mean, I don't bot trade, but there are people who have done well with bot trading, maybe that keeping them more disciplined because you're only going in the trade when it's programmed to take it. So yeah, there's that type of stuff as well. But I think the biggest hurdle is kind of, realizing that, you're not going to have these crazy extramental gains. Even if you get lucky in the beginning, that's not going to keep going unless you're the luckiest person in the world.
Yeah, no, I had a friend, and he doesn't trade that often. He'll just, jump in now and then if he sees an opportunity. And he did really well. And I think it was on a Bitcoin trade. With quite high leverage. So he made loads of money, and he was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then he traded again, and I think he lost all of it.
Yeah.
He had the self-awareness, enough to know that he's not a trader, and he sort of got this overconfidence from that winning trade. But
Yeah.
I think it's very true. I think you go in, and if you get, really lucky on one trade and you make loads of money, I think it does give you this sense of confidence, right? And I think when you've got that confidence, without sort of the knowledge, or without, the know-how, that's when you're then going to end up losing, because you're going in with like this almost this fake bullishness, right? Because you got lucky on one trade.
Yeah.
Psychology behind it is fascinating. The way people think about it, and yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, the other thing too is like even not for trading, like I mean, market conditions kind of change. Like everybody thinks like this decade is going to be like the last one. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people who did very, very well, just buying every dip on the NASDAQ from 2011 to 2021. And now, it's probably not going to be like that in the next 10 years. It's probably not going to be, you keep buying. Yeah, I know people who just go leverage with like NASDAQ with the T triple Q, all that type of stuff. And you could do that for a year. There's certain things that work for years, and then years later it kind of won't work. Like things change. Like that's why you got to really adapt to it.
Yeah, definitely. One final question, Evan. I like to ask everyone this. It's a little bit off topic, but it does put you on the spot a bit. Is if you had to pick the 3 most influential people, so have had the most impact on you, can be traders, it could be celebrities, it could be family, friends, it could be anybody. Who would you pick?
Oh man, influence like in general or on trading or in just in
Anyone that's impacted, the way you think about something, your mindset, who's taught you a lesson. I don't know. It could be anybody.
Oh man. So that's a tough one. There's a lot of people. I remember like growing up, I used to always kind of really like Tom Brady, the football player, just always impressed by how he was able to kind of play so many years and have like just that such outstanding career. When people were saying he was washed up, after he lost 2 Super Bowls when he was in his mid 30s, and then to come back and win, I believe it was another like 4 Super Bowls, and that kind of showed me too, like because people used to always like say, I remember even in YouTube comments, people used to always say like, I used to say like, yeah, your life could change in 6 months or a year. It could get a lot better. People would say, oh no, it could get a lot worse too. You don't know if it's going good. And then I always like to look at people that a lot of things have gone really good for them. And like, that's a good example of somebody like there's people that have had very, very good lives. It's possible. Sure. Tom Brady's had what was his worst setbacks? Maybe tearing his ACL one year, losing a couple of Super Bowls, things like that. But he hasn't had that many big of setbacks. So it is possible to be very, very successful. Always kind of have, if you're able to kind of get into your mind, law of attraction, positive thinking, to have kind of really big things, kind of work. It's not, you don't have to, it's not a zero sum game. Just because something good happened to you, it doesn't mean things have to crumble and fall apart as, that kind of fear. A lot of things that happen, it's kind of all in our head. It's all in our subconscious. And I think, that kind of goes into trading too. I mean, I think your conscience is kind of, your subconscious is in control. Your conscience is kind of, telling, your conscience knows like, I shouldn't make this trade. I shouldn't do this. This is too risky. This is stupid. But your subconscious deep down says to you, no, I'm not a rich person. I'm not this. I need to screw up and lose kind of all this. I think your subconscious is kind of smarter than your conscious. That's this stuff I'm still learning about. It's kind of pseudoscience. It's another topic for another day probably. But I think that's ultimately really kind of important. That's why we always see, kind of, you're not the smartest person and you succeed at everything your whole life. And then somebody else who's more hardworking, who's smarter, they always find a way to kind of lose. And that's kind of the the programming. So this kind of shows why some people with maybe just an average IQ are able to always win, and somebody who's a really high IQ, they'll win sometimes, but maybe they don't succeed as much as you would nearly believe. So that was a good in terms of like law of chart. That was a good person that I always was a big fan of Tom Brady. In terms of like crypto face was a big one, like I mentioned.
Mm.
Jason Casper, I learned a lot from because he taught like the trading, taught the market cipher. I mean, there's a lot of people. As just a standard kind of analyst, I liked for a lot of long term. Ben Cowan was a big one that I really liked, that I really watched a lot. And in terms of a lot of books that I've read, oh man, Napoleon Hill, Outwitting the Devil is a book that I really, really like. The audiobook of that is really good. Kind of in terms of law of attraction. I think that's better than his Think and Grow Rich book. But a lot of those books about, those self-help books, some of them are kind of nonsense, but read a lot, I would say. Just read a lot, get a lot of knowledge. I think that's very, very helpful.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I always have sort of like this, this feeling about, say, content creation. And I think people are always trying to grow their influence. They're trying to put out this content. But I feel like the best content creators, they consume so much more content than they put out. And whether that's watching other videos, whether that's reading books, like you say, I feel like in order to have the best understanding and put the best content out, you have to keep consuming this content. And so I completely agree with you on like the self-help books and stuff. I think always reading, always learning, always taking things
Yeah.
in is so important. So yeah, great answers.
Yep.
Thanks for joining us today, Evan. It's been great to have you. And thanks everyone for listening. I will link Evan's YouTube in the description so you can all go and check him out if you're interested in finding out more about his trading. But otherwise, thanks for coming, Evan.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was fun. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. And yeah, I'll see you all soon. Bye, everyone.